Welcome to Smarter Circuits, the podcast. I was alone. I took a ride. I didn't know what I would find there. Today I'm going to be talking about ways of getting the most for your money, or at least suggestions that I have. But before that, old business, which I don't really have much. The only thing I have is I'm still working on the studio. I think I'll be shooting this weekend, and I will talk more about that in the channel update later. So new business, which I don't really have a whole lot of, other than I have some strange happenings going on with my Home Assistant. For those of you out there who have Home Assistant, if you are experiencing something similar, I would like to know. If you have a solution to what I am about to describe, I would definitely like to know. I did try to fix these things. I researched them. I did all the things that I found online. So anyway, let me elaborate on what. The first thing is my Govee Bluetooth integration stopped working. I removed them because I was going to give them away. I ended up keeping half of them. And when I repaired them, which did work, they did show their temperature. But after restarting Home Assistant, they now show unavailable, and they have ever since. Even if I repair them, they still show unavailable. So I don't know what is going on there. I don't think it's the Bluetooth radio because my Shelly Bluetooth devices still work just fine. And I do have Shelly Bluetooth gateways, but I don't think that matters. I don't think that they do, I don't think they translate the information to Home Assistant. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think so. And then the other thing is actually my Shelly integration. It keeps reporting about half my devices need repairs, and it's always random, and it changes like several times, possibly a second. So I'm not sure exactly what that is. Well, maybe not several times a second, but it does change pretty quickly. It's done that for months. And it did it before I changed the IPs, but I did change the IPs. And this is when, the reason that I bring it up now is I wanted to talk about this little annoyance that turned into like one of the most frustrating things ever. The repairs themselves don't seem to affect anything. They just keep reporting them. But all of the sensor data comes through in near real time, and I can still turn things on and off and set dimmers and so on and so forth. It hasn't changed the functionality. But when I changed the IP addresses, I had to go into the Shelly integration, into the device list, go into the little 3-dot menu and hit reconfigure in order to change the IPs, which worked. When I hit submit after that, it successfully did it like instantaneously. Beautiful. But getting to that reconfigure dialog correctly was so difficult, because the list changes order very quickly. And at first I thought it was just because of the repairs, until I realized that the devices themselves were changing order, even the ones that weren't reporting repair issues. So what would happen is you'd click on device A, the menu for it, the menu would pop up, and let's say it flipped to device B before you noticed and you clicked on reconfigure, the dialog that popped up would be for device B. And if you weren't paying attention, which is easy to do when you're changing, 100 devices or so, you may just assign the wrong IPs to the wrong things. It shows you the old IP, and it shows you the name of the thing. But the name of the thing, even though it's bold, doesn't really stick out, especially if it's long, like, maybe you left it as Shelly 1 p.m. dash the MAC address. So yeah, I could see where that would be a huge problem. And it was really irritating. It was like trying to play like context menu whack-a-mole. Did not enjoy that experience. So if you have had similar experiences, or you know what's wrong, or think you know what's wrong, I'd love to hear about it. Either comment on the video, shoot me a message on Discord, or email me at smartercircuits@gmail.com. Okay, let's get into the main topic, getting the most for your money, or at least a few ways that I think you will get the most for your money. especially when we talk about automation and home automation. Automation is something that is needed all over the place. It's something we've been doing for a very long time all over the place. And the place that we've been doing it the most is in manufacturing. So if you're looking for something that is, like relays, for instance, control relays, you could probably look in the commercial and industrial sphere and find a more robust one for not much more money. And oftentimes, if there is a commercial equivalent that you can use, you will get, maybe you'll pay twice as much, but you'll get 3 times as much life out of it. At least that's been my experience. I'm sure that there are still some that are crap. But for the most part, other manufacturing concerns and, big businesses, they expect to be able to, swap something out maybe once every 5 or 6 years or 10 years or, they want more life than your average consumer electronic device. So my first piece of advice is try to find the commercial or industrial version. Do not trust things that say industrial strength or commercial grade, because I would say at least half the time those are complete bull. Maybe they're a little bit more robust or durable than the regular, non-industrial strength or non-commercial grade shelf product, but they're probably not the actual commercial version of that thing. So, and honestly, most of the time, you can tell if a thing is actually commercial or industrial grade by its packaging. Commercial products don't need shelf appeal, so they don't make the packaging too flashy because, why waste the money? So oftentimes if you see something that has big flashy industrial strength, it's probably not. They're probably just doing that to raise the price. And that's true of a lot of things. One other thing, though, that you can tell whether or not it's a commercial product, a commercial version, or even if it's just a good one, is by looking very carefully at the materials it's made of. How thick is the plastic? How thick is the metal? What kind of plastic? What kind of metal? What kind of electronics are in it, on it? If you can get one, like let's say you bought a sample one because you need 30 of them, take it apart and look at the PCB. Look at the brands on the components. See if it's something that the manufacturer has spent good money on their materials before putting it together. That's one of the reasons why I like Shelly, actually. Early on in the channel, I dissected Shelly products, and I found what I knew to be quality components that they spent a little extra on than they could have gotten, that they could have. And I respect that. They did it because they wanted that robustness specifically. There's no other reason to do it. So, and oftentimes you can tell the quality of a thing by just looking for it. Look for it as though you were a manufacturer and see where it's available, who sells it, how expensive it is. Compare it to other things of the similar type. And this is, not everybody has to dive this deep. The other thing that I want to suggest is that you look into the manufacturers themselves. And you don't have to. You don't have to go as deep as some of these things. But if you do, it will benefit you, I promise. Especially knowing where things are manufactured, because oftentimes you might get a situation like we had with the Netgear routers, switches, and access points of the early 2000s. Cisco owns Netgear, and so they released these routers. It was like the WRT54. I had the 54GS, and then the WAP54, and I can't remember what the switch was, but it was the same. It was along those lines. Those devices were actually commercial grade devices that were disguised as consumer grade devices. The reason is because Cisco determined that it would actually be cheaper to just do that than to retool the factory or buy different boards. So what they did was they kind of did a Tesla. They disabled some of the hardware capabilities in the firmware and just ignored it. Now, they didn't charge you to be able to access those things like Tesla would. They just didn't use them. But of course, the open source community and Tinkers almost immediately figured this out and figured out a new firmware. I used DDWRT, but there were several others as well. And it was really awesome. There are a lot of products that are like that. So make sure you know those things. It's a good thing to be able to source whatever it is you're making. And a lot of people are sort of familiar with this anyway. A lot of people will look at like something that's, I don't know. This is an arbitrary example, but let's say it's branded LG, but it's the exact same shape as a Kenmore. Chances are they were both made in the same place and just badged differently. And every manufacturer on Earth has dabbled with this, at least at one point. That's why you have Ford, Lincoln, Mercury, right? You ever notice how, Ford Thunderbird looked an awful lot like a Mercury Cougar? Because they were the exact same vehicle, just with a different grille and badging. There's a lot of that goes on at every level of manufacturing. Not just little tiny things, but big things too. And a lot of electronics. Because there's a lot of, and in the electronics sphere, it's actually worse because there's all this weird licensing that goes on. Last week I talked about RCA. At one point, there was this really awful thing that they had to do to stay afloat where I want to say it was like 60% of their revenue leaned on licensing a competitor's product and paying them to make it with their name on it. That is just wild to me. But those things are done all the time. And if you know where they're coming from, maybe you can find an off-brand, you might find a Sony product that's labeled, the YYRF3 or whatever it is on Amazon. I don't know that Sony does a lot of white labeling, but they do some. I do know they do some, but I want to say they do more in appliances than they do in regular consumer electronics. I could be wrong about that. I'm not sure. If you know, let me know in the comments or whatever. So another thing that I want to cover real quick, I want to give you guys some tools that you may not be aware of for figuring out some of these things, figuring out what the inside of a thing looks like, or figuring out what, where a thing was made, or who actually, is getting the last buck. You don't necessarily, so if your thing has a radio, you actually may not need to even take it apart in order to see what the inside is made of. And the reason is because when a device has a radio and files for an FCC cert, they have to give the FCC pictures of the inside of the device. And the FCC makes those public. So you can go and look up your device on the FCC website and see all kinds of useful information. You can see the inside of the device. You can see who filed the cert. That will actually get you pretty far, because I've noticed that, the FCC, they wouldn't care if every Amazon company did a filing, but if every Amazon company did a filing, the main company that actually owns most of them would spend more than they really need to, because the FCC doesn't care if a thing is white labeled. So you can tell the FCC, this is the device, and these are all of the models that it is. And the FCC is totally cool with that. And that's what a lot of them do. So you'll be able to see who the actual main company is if you look at the FCC filing. This is also true for UL listings. But I will say this. The UL listing website, you have to sign up for an account and they will send you some junk email. But it's worth doing, in my opinion. Just use a burner email or something. And then The last resort, in my opinion, is the patent office. You can always look for that to see what a thing is made of, and maybe if you know a little bit about it, determine whether or not it seems like it's built well. The patents are like weird anyway, so they're hard to look through. There's tons of them. They don't always help you. But if you can look through the FCC or the UL certs, I highly recommend it. Another thing that you can look at are consumer case studies. And there are quite a few colleges that do these and publish their results, make them available to the public for free. Two of those are actually Harvard and Stanford. So I will link to the Harvard and Stanford case study libraries or searches, in the description. I'll also link to the UL website and the FCC website. I'm also going to do a few others. Another thing that you can actually look into. So if you want to know, like, let's say you figured it out. You figured out who makes the thing. Now you want to know whether or not that company is any good. There are several ways of doing that. And again, you don't have to go to these depths. But, if you're like me, A, maybe it's interesting. B, it will give you a little bit more insight into the kind of things that these companies are going to do. So, like, for instance, we all pretty much know, I think, not to trust that Google will keep a service for too long. They may just get bored of it and shelve it 3 months, giving you 3 months warning, if that. So in order to figure out whether companies are like that, you can do a little bit of digging on the company. And the best ways to do that are to look through those companies' histories. And a lot of that is public record and is kept in very searchable places. One such place is in the business archives in archivist.org, link in the description, and another is to just go through the Library of Congress. They have specific places where you can search business history specific to a business, if it's a big enough business, right? And it's registered here. And I'm sure that there are other sites like this that are available in other countries. I should have looked for those before I did this video or this episode. I didn't think about that. Too late. Not going to do it. So just go look. Honestly, you may even be able to glean some information from some of our certs as well, because a lot of this stuff does show up in both markets. Even though it'll be, designed to work for, the 110 that we have here, or 120, depending on your age. There's a lot of similarities in many cases. So the next thing that I want to talk about is common manufacturers of specific components. There are a lot of places where you can find who sells the most or who the other companies are buying from the most by going through places like Thomasnet. Thomasnet.com, again, link in the description, is a good way to just figure out, and MFG.com is another one that you can just search and find like companies that do specific things, because that can give you a little bit of insight as well. Again, this is getting to a level of detail that you may not care about, and that's fine. It's not going to be of detriment to you, figuring out business histories and whatnot, or not figuring out business histories. But, if you are the kind of person that likes checking into those things, businesses, when they hire people, do background checks. So why wouldn't you do a background check on somebody who you're trusting to make a product for you that goes in your home? That feels like more reason to do a background check to me. I don't know. Maybe I'm just crazy. I know I'm pedantic, and I'm perfectly okay with that. Okay, so that's really all I have to say on the topic of getting more for your money. Make sure you're getting something that's going to last. I mean, obviously, that's what we all look for. And you'll know fairly quickly, I think, these days anyway, whether or not a product is any good right out of the box. So, now it's time for the channel update. Real quick, I'm still working on the protocol script. I have been working on the protocol script for, I believe, nearly a month, maybe over. It's huge. So I am going to take the advice given to me by a certain Discord member, supporter, and viewer/listener, and split the video up into multiple videos. I will not be able to do that in enough time to shoot this weekend, so I'm going to be shooting something in between. And it's probably going to be related to Shelly products, or some kind of testing thing. Not sure yet, but there will be another video before the protocols videos, and then the protocol video is now protocol videos. Over the holiday, there was actually a pretty big dip in subscribers to the channel. I don't know if that was like something that YouTube was doing where they were clearing out some invalid accounts or something. But I hope that it wasn't like a mass exodus. But if there's something that you are unhappy with, I mean, if you're listening at this point, I think that you're probably not likely to be too critical. But if there's something that you don't like, or something that you would like to see more of that I don't do anymore, let me know. I need feedback. There's no way I can improve unless I know that, the direction that I should go. Yeah. Oh, interesting little side note. My most popular video for the lifetime of the channel is my Shelly energy meter video. And I think part of it has to do with the bicycle chain example. But I will probably go back over that particular thing because I'm actually super not happy with that video. So yeah, there's even more reason for me to go back to doing some Shelly stuff. Anyway, excuse me, I'm getting really raspy. I apologize. Final thoughts. If you need to contact me, you can contact me through the comments on the video, through the Discord, or by emailing me at smartercircuits@gmail.com. I always welcome feedback because that's how I grow. So I would like to thank all of my members, subscribers, viewers, listeners, and attentive telepaths for being here with me. We all have a limited number of minutes, and we don't even know how many that is. And you've spent some of yours with me, and that's really awesome. I greatly appreciate that. That is, for those of you who are doing that and giving me money, I dig that too. But I think that our time is really the most valuable thing in the world. Matter of fact, the money really is just a representation of that anyway, if you think about it. But the point being, everybody who supports the channel in any way, thank you very much. Happy New Year, and I hope you'll join me next week as I continue to rattle on about smarter circuits.